Hello, Iona College. Welcome back to the Sports Vault, and we're gonna move right on to our college football segment. Obviously, last night might have been one of the best Thursday nights of the season so far. Two amazing games. You had Oklahoma and Baylor, and Oregon and Stanford. And we'll start off with the Oklahoma Baylor game. Baylor won 41-12, and I wasn't really sold on Baylor this far. Their schedule they really didn't play any big opponents so far this year, but that was a solid win against a pretty good Oklahoma team. And here's the thing with Baylor, though. It doesn't get any easier from here. They got to go to Texas Tech next, who's played a good year. They have Oklahoma State after that, TCU, and then Texas. So that's a really brutal final stretch of the season. But Baylor, I mean, they're probably going to rank up to even the 4 spot, still being undefeated. But that was a pretty convincing win. They put up a lot of points against a pretty good defense. Definitely better than the other teams they've been playing. And that's a good win for Baylor, Rob. What takeaways did you have from the game?
I thought it was a great game. They're showing, a lot of people don't think they should even be up here where they are in the top 10 category. But they definitely showed after that huge win that they definitely belong up there and they should be 5 or 4 right now.
Yeah, I was definitely one of those people. I was not a believer in Baylor, but that was a very convincing win. And if they finish out the schedule with a win against Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, TCU, and Texas, then there's no way they don't deserve to be where they are. That is a very convincing one. If they do that, I'm all on board for Baylor. After that, Rob, though, I had high hopes for the Oregon this year. I like this Ducks team. They're fun to watch, but they lost to Stanford 26-20. Just like last year, they lost that game, and Stanford's just been the team to get in their way. It just seems Stanford matches up so well against them. Stanford just dominated every aspect of the game last night. Oregon made it a little interesting at the end, but it was never too serious. And the big takeaway I have from this is Marcus Mariota's Heisman stock. I think it's going to take a little drop from there after last night. The main reason being is you had Jameis Winston, who I think is now the front runner. The biggest game for him for this year probably was the game against Clemson, and he dominated in that game. This was probably Mariota's biggest game of the year, and it was a disappointing loss for Oregon. So I think Winston's stock is up. And Mariota's still going to get a lot of votes. He'll be one of the front runners, but right now I think Winston is the Heisman runner. Rob, who do you think?
Yeah, I like Winston. He's been explosive this whole year, throwing touchdowns like crazy. Great numbers by this kid. And with Oregon though, the guy definitely just lost his spot for Heisman. He's going down maybe second or third on that list for the Heisman Trophy Award. When you have a game like this for Stanford, you gotta come out shooting. You can't show up only in the fourth quarter and score 20 points. You gotta show up all 4 quarters, put up points for your team. Stanford took real advantage of them in that game last night.
Absolutely. I mean, that was a game Mariota really had to have to solidify his year. I mean, he put up big numbers, but this was the biggest one that they needed to count, and they just couldn't get it done. I mean, I think it was a collective effort. It just wasn't there. Stanford just played a great game, but Mariota had a couple bad turnovers. Offensively, they just really couldn't get anything going last night. So big win for Stanford, and it'll be curious to see what happens with there. But we'll go over now. There's only 4 undefeated teams now who are probably going to make up the bulk of the top 5. You have Alabama, who are playing LSU, followed by Mississippi State, something called Chattanooga. Who knows Chattanooga? And then Auburn. And Auburn is an interesting final game, but other than LSU this week, I really don't see any opportunity for Alabama to slip up. They're going to remain number 1 unless something happens, but obviously there. And then Florida State, they play Wake Forest, Syracuse, Idaho, and Florida. Florida would be interesting, but they're so banged up right now. They have nobody. They're just so injured. Florida State should finish it out pretty easily. So you should have your number 1 and 2 there, Alabama and Florida State, which could make for a very interesting final championship game. That would be a really good game. Jameis Winston against Alabama. I would be very interested to see what happens there. Then you probably will have 3 Ohio State who will take the spot of Oregon. And they finish it out against Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. That's nothing right there. I mean, Michigan could be kind of interesting because it's a rivalry game, but Ohio State, I'm not too sold on Michigan. They should win that game easily. And then, like we said before, you have Baylor against Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and TCU in Texas. And that is a brutal final stretch right there. Definitely the hardest out of the other 3. And I'm telling you, if Baylor finishes out against those teams, I'll be very high on Baylor stock. That's a really tough final stretch, but we'll see how that happens. The big games this weekend, though, Not too many. You have LSU, Alabama, and that's always a fun game, Rob. Who do you have in this game?
I got Alabama.
Yeah.
Nick Saban's team, they're 8-0, and I think they're going to finish strong. You know Saban, when he's coming down to the halfway mark, his team always finishes strong to end the year. LSU, though, Les Miles thinks he can win this game. These games, though, are very competitive. You know, this is one of the biggest rivalry in sports. I'm still going Bama in this one.
I always love watching these games. These are always really fun games to watch. They're always close and competitive. Both really good programs, both great coaches. I love watching these teams play. I think it's going to come down to a couple plays here and there, but I think Alabama, they're just too much of a talented team. I really like Zach Mettenberger, though. I'm not too sure how Alabama's defense is going to look against him. I think it could be a high-scoring game because Mettenberger's a capable quarterback, and if he can read that defense well and disrupt them, I think that he could put up some points. And if Bama's forced to really make their offense more explosive, it could be in LSU's favor. So I could see LSU pulling it out. It's definitely the Alabama's hardest final game, but I think Alabama will pull away with it too. It's really not a great weekend other than that game, but the only two other noteworthy ones are Virginia Tech and Miami. I'm just curious to see how Miami is going to bounce back after that tough loss last week. They were having a great season and tough loss to Florida State, but Florida State's unbelievable, so you can't really hold that against them. And Florida State against Wake Forest, whenever Jameis Winston's on TV, I mean, you should watch him. He's unbelievable. Not a great team against Wake Forest, but Florida State's a very explosive team, fun to watch. So that's there. That's going to do it, though, for our college football segment. We're going to be back. We've got a lot of NBA stuff to get to. I know everybody's excited for that. So we'll be right back with that and be there in a minute.